United States produces more energy than any other country and is a leader in greenhouse gas emission reductions. These two major milestones are happening simultaneously thanks to companies like Range Resources, who have unlocked an abundance of American natural gas, a clean, versatile fuel that's used to heat and power our homes, cook our food, and create many of the plastic products we use daily. Today, natural gas is the leading source for power generation, accounting for about 1/3 of all U.S. power. In Pennsylvania, there are more than a dozen new combined-cycle gas-fired power plants that are planned, under construction, or have recently been brought online. As more natural gas is produced and used to generate a larger share of our nation's electricity, air quality dramatically improves since it emits just half the CO2 emissions compared to coal, the leading source for electricity generation until the shale revolution took off. In fact, U.S. CO2 emissions have fallen more than any other nation and are at the lowest level since the early 1990s. The EPA says emissions of harmful air pollutants like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and particulate matter plummeted 73% over that same period. Pennsylvania, a natural gas leader with strong regulations, is at the forefront of this important environmental progress. And so is Range Resources. We are committed to maximizing these shared benefits by being good stewards of our environment and communities where we live and work. With a long, clear record of implementing innovative, effective environmental best practices, Range recently announced a commitment to achieve zero emissions across our operations. We believe we can accomplish this by deploying advanced technologies, including custom-engineered production facilities that reduce emissions, a robust leak detection and repair program that requires regular inspections with special infrared or FLIR cameras, and a rigorous reporting program. Thanks to American natural gas, we can all breathe easier, knowing our air is cleaner and our environment stronger.
Why natural gas? Natural gas is clean. A new supply of natural gas from shale formations is revolutionizing America's energy landscape. It emits 50% less CO2 than coal and 30% less than oil. And unlike coal, it emits no mercury. In vehicles, it creates 90% less smog, which all adds up to cleaner air. Natural gas is affordable. As gasoline prices escalate, drivers want lower-cost options. Fueling cars with natural gas costs 60 to 70% less than gasoline or diesel. And with technical innovations, natural gas should remain low-priced in the future. Natural gas is abundant. Shale formations in the U.S. hold enough natural gas to meet current demand for 200 years or more. In fact, the Marcellus Shale, which Range pioneered in 2004, is believed to be the second largest gas field ever. The U.S. has more natural gas than Saudi Arabia has oil, and is the world's top producer of natural gas. Natural gas is American. 98% of the natural gas we use comes from North America, reducing dependence on foreign oil. And natural gas keeps dollars at home, supporting millions of Americans. Natural gas is the future. Natural gas powers our homes, lowers transportation costs, reduces air pollution, and creates jobs. Range Resources is uncovering tomorrow's energy today.
Hello, welcome to today's BotsIQ MFG virtual event, where the professionals at Range Resources will take you on a live virtual tour of a drilling rig and production pad located in Washington County, Pennsylvania. My name is Maria Camperi, and I am the Youth Service Manager of BotsIQ, a program of the Pittsburgh Chapter National Tooling and Machining Foundation. Today's event is being recorded and will be available with the same YouTube link used today. Additionally, within the YouTube's video description, you will find a link to ask questions to our hosts during the live event happening right now on October 19th. Throughout the month of October, BotsIQ has had the fine pleasure with our industry partners celebrating manufacturing. Our virtual events are opening the doors of local companies and showing the reality of modern manufacturing and educating our communities about the careers available in the industry. Some of you may wonder, why and how is energy important to manufacturing? Energy is the lifeblood of manufacturing. Industries convert fuel to energy and manufacture all the products of our daily lives. Energy allows manufacturers to transform raw materials into final consumer goods. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the United States produces the most natural gas in the entire world. Unlocking the shale gas guarantees the United States more than a 200-year supply of clean burning natural gas. The Marcellus Shale Formation is the second largest natural gas field in the world and lies under 75% of the state of Pennsylvania. More than 70% of the Marcellus-related jobs are filled by Pennsylvanians. Today, you will learn so much more about the natural gas industry, and from the professionals at Range Resources. I am excited to introduce and welcome our tour host today from Range Resources, Laurel Zimba, Public Affairs Director, Christina Kramer, Community Relations Specialist, Kylie Fuller, Community Relations Representative, Bob Green, Area Production Supervisor, and Pat Quinn, Drilling Operations Manager. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the event over to Christina with Range Resources.
Thank you, Maria. And thanks to everyone, our partners at BotsIQ, for partnering with us to present today's Range Resources virtual tour. Range is the company which produces the most natural gas in Washington County, Pennsylvania, and we've been operating here in Pennsylvania for over 25 years. The talented professionals at Range Resources utilize math, science, and engineering to produce clean burning natural gas from geologic formations like the Marcellus Shale in an environmentally responsible, innovative, and efficient way. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to a few of those very talented professionals and for you to get an up close and personal look at two of our operating locations in Washington County. Before we get started, Let's think a little bit about how natural gas plays a role in our lives. And Maria covered it really well in how she talked about how manufacturing and energy are a partnership. We use natural gas for so many things. For instance, the phone or the computer you're utilizing right now to view this virtual tour runs on electricity powered by natural gas. And natural gas also heats our home, helps to cook our food. And as Maria said, byproducts from natural gas go into the manufacturing of everyday items like clothing fibers, tires on your car, plastics, just so many things that we encounter in our daily lives. We're so thankful to BotsIQ for helping us to educate you all on how Range produces natural gas right here in our region, how the increased use of natural gas is benefiting our environment and your community, and how we are all helping Pennsylvania and the US become energy secure. Without further ado, let's get started. There are 4 stages to the natural gas development process: planning, drilling, completions, and production. And we're getting ready to start a time-lapse video that shows a fast forward of the whole process. And we're going to start with planning. And the video starts showing the construction of a natural gas well site. However, lots goes on behind the scenes prior to and during the actual construction of a site. So during the planning stage, the very first step of developing a well site is acquiring leases from the people who own the land or the mineral rights to the land we'll be utilizing to develop natural gas. Next, the well site is designed by Range engineers, and then we work with local government agencies to gain permission and obtain the proper permits to be able to operate there. So here's the construction of the well site going on here. And from a career perspective, you guys, you might think of natural gas and energy jobs as the people with the hard hats out there in the field. And those jobs are awesome and so important. But with this planning process, it's a good way that shows that there are actually other jobs within the process. That you can work in an office. We have a legal department. We have a local government affairs department. So there are just so many careers. It's not a one size fits all or just one career that you can have. And as the time-lapse video is going on, there you go. There's the drilling rig. So the second stage of the natural gas development process is drilling. And you'll get to see that today. So utilizing horizontal drilling technologies, Range can drill multiple wells from one single site. During the drilling process, multiple strings of permanent steel casing are inserted into the well and are cemented fully to the surface. After reaching a predetermined depth, which is typically more than 6,000 feet or about a mile beneath our feet, that's when horizontal drilling begins. Each individual well takes a few weeks to drill. Once those are completed, the drilling rig leaves the location and the third stage begins, and that's completions. But what we're looking at here is a Range drill site, so it hasn't quite moved into the completions stage quite yet. But there goes the drilling rig. So it looks like we're moving on to completions now. Perfect timing. This is where hydraulic fracturing or fracking takes place. This is the process that allows the natural gas to flow where it would otherwise be trapped in the rocks beneath the surface. Fracturing fluid is pumped downhole in each well to create a network of paper-thin fractures within the rock that allows the natural gas to flow. This fluid is typically 99.9% water and sand, and then the other 0.1% is a mix of highly diluted additives, many of which are biodegradable, so like things that you might find in your toothpaste. And what these additives do is make sure that the fractures stay clean and remain open so the natural gas can flow through. And this phase typically takes 2 to 3 days per well. And once that's completed, the equipment leaves and we move to the final stage of the natural gas development process. And that is the production phase. And you all are also going to get to see the production phase. And that's when the natural gas flows through a system of pipelines from the location on pad to a sales point and eventually to your homes and other facilities to be utilized for all the uses that we talked about. Each site is reclaimed to blend in with the natural surroundings, and you'll see that today. And each site is also monitored 24/7 from our remote field office. But in addition to that, we have employees that inspect these sites on a daily basis. So, okay, now that we got all that out of the way and you guys know all about the 4 stages of the natural gas development process, I am very excited to send you all out virtually into the field. We are going to go to a drilling site. And so now I'm going to ask to turn it over to my colleague, Kylie Fuller. She works in the Public Affairs Department, and also Pat Quinn. He is our drilling operations manager. So guys, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Guyton Patrick Pad, which is located just off of 519 North Strabane Township in Washington County, Pennsylvania. Today, I have the pleasure of getting to show you around one of our drilling rigs, being Pioneer 78, and tell you a little bit about Range's operation here and what we do to successfully drill our Marcellus Shale well. So a little background on the Guyton Pad before we start. We are currently drilling the 5th well of 7 on this pad, and this morning, the rig actually just got done drilling the curve section of the well, landed the curve, and has started drilling the lateral or the horizontal section of the wellbore. So this rig today will continue drilling on the horizontal section of the wellbore until we reach about 16,000 feet in measured depth, which is the entire length of the pipe that we'll have in the well. Straight up and down vertically, this well in the Marcellus in this area is about 7,500 feet deep. So as was mentioned before, there's a lot of planning and a lot of prep work that gets us to this point in the well. So what I want to do is take a time to discuss a little bit about the background and how we got to have 7 wells on this pad. So if we take a look over here, we'll take a little walk. We have a great example of a casing display, and we'll talk a little bit about what it takes to get us to have 7 wells available on the pad. So as you can see here, we have examples of different strengths of steel pipe or casing that are set in the wells. One of the very interesting things about drilling a Marcellus well on our piece of the process is it actually takes not 1, but 2 rigs in order to successfully get these wells ready to drill the curve and lateral sections. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Whenever we first prepare a pad for a number of wells that we're going to drill, we will have a rig that comes in first, which is the top hole rig or the air rig. This will drill the well from the surface all the way down to the kickoff point or the point in the well in which wellbore will become deviated from its vertical position. We will start drilling the curve section. So the top hole rig will set and cement the 20-inch casing, the 13 3/8-inch casing, and the 9 5/8-inch casing. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what each of those strings of pipe actually does in the well. So our 20-inch casing is our water protection casing. We set and cement this casing all the way back to surface to protect any freshwater zones that are surrounding the pad. Afterwards, the rig will drill, and then they will set our cold protection casing, or 13 3/8-inch outer diameter casing. Due to being in cold country in Appalachia, there are coal seams that are present, mined out, or maybe the coal is still intact. But we want to make sure that we isolate those and protect them from the wellbore, which the 13 3/8-inch casing string is run, and then again, cemented completely back to surface. After that, the rig will run, set, and cement an intermediate string of pipe, known as our 9 5/8-inch casing. This helps to serve to protect the well, again, from any additional troublesome zones that could be underneath before we drill the well down to kickoff point. After that, we'll talk more about the process, but whenever the rig is done, it will run this 5.5-inch production casing that goes all the way from the surface of the well, all the way out to the total depth of the well, and then again is cemented. So here's a great example of a cutaway. If you were to take a cross section of each of those strings of casing and the different layers of cement that are used to help protect the well from the surrounding formation. So as you can see, it's a very detailed and in-depth process, and there's a lot that goes into it. So now that we've got a little general overview of the air rig and how we got to this point, let's look sneak back over here and we'll look again at another example of what these strings do. So as you can see, for an example depth where these would be set, the water protection string is set to roughly 400 feet and then cemented to surface. The mine protection string, a little over 500. And again, for our intermediate string is set to 1800 in this example. Then again, the production string set all the way from surface, all the way to the tippy toe of the well. These devices that are on the end that are shown here are called centralizers. What these centralizers do is whenever we run the casing in the well, these are installed in order to keep the pipe centered in the middle of the hole. That way, whenever we pump our cement, we get a nice uniform cement sheath all the way around the outer layer of the casing, again, to protect the well from everything that we have around it. So this is a basic overview of the process that we have for the 2 air rig setup. A couple things that I want to point out to you all while we're here, since we have the opportunity, is if you were to see, we can have these large walls behind me that are set. So these are what are known as sound walls. Part of what we do at Range before we get to a site to drill a well is we will perform sound modeling studies. We want to make sure that we're being good temporary neighbors while we're here drilling these wells. So the sound walls are installed in order to help lessen any sound impact that we think that we might have for our neighbors in our community while we are here. Another interesting fact, and we'll get a better shot of, is we have containment, which is a 60 millimeter plastic, which is run and set all the way around the rig, just as an added layer of protection. If in the event we were to have any type of incidental release, we know that it is protected and is not hitting the ground. So a couple things that we have as best practices here at Range. So that's some of the background. So let's talk about the rig a little bit while we're here as well. So this is Pioneer 78. Pioneer 78 first came to Range in 2015 and has since drilled many successful wells for Range. Let's go back in time a little bit though to talk about where we got to where we are today. So if you rewind all the way back to 2013, the average lateral length or the horizontal section of the wellbore that we would drill was only about 3,500 feet. Today, Range, with our current technologies and best practices that we have, we've been able to extend those lateral lengths from 3,500 feet all the way over to 19,000 plus feet. That's just the lateral section of the well. So we have been able to substantially increase our laterals that we've drilled over the years. And one of the nice things about it is it creates less surface disturbance and allows us to access more of the Marcellus shale that we talked about before. So what we're going to do now as we progress through the tour is we're going to take a look at some of the technology and some of the different things that we use in order to successfully drill the wells. So as we take a look around the site here, just want to point out a couple things as we look at the rig. So the big white thing in the air, that is what is known as the derrick. So if you're to take the rig from the base all the way to the tippy top, it is just under 170 feet. Now let's talk about another notable item that you see when we're looking at this rig. So we are currently drilling the lateral section right now. If you're to look up the middle, we see the drill pipe as it's rotating as it is coming down. On the right of the rig in the derrick, we see the drill pipe that is made up. So this rig is known as a triples rig, and it is called a triples rig because we have 3 pieces of drill pipe that are screwed together to make one stand. Each stand that we drill is roughly 90 feet in length. After we drill down one of those 90-foot sections, we will stop and we will screw in an additional piece of drill pipe in order to continue drilling the well where we are in the curve, or in this case, in the lateral section of the well. So now let's talk a little bit about the personnel that we have on location here too that man our operations. So typically our personnel that we have work on hitches of 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. So I am very lucky today to be joined by some very special guests. I have Mr. John Fountain. He's one of our horizontal drilling superintendents. And we have Melissa Shaughnessy. Melissa helps with office work as well as field work at Range. So very lucky to have them here today. So let's talk about John. So John works 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. The way this works is John will come to work for 2 weeks. Well, unfortunately, John's a big dog, so he's on call 24/7. But typically, the guys would work 12-hour shifts. So that's how it works. You come to work for your 2 weeks. Typically, the individuals would live at the rig in our on-site accommodations that we have that are temporary while the rig is here. 12-hour shift, and they will do that for 2 weeks, and then they go on their time off and enjoy their 2 weeks off. John has been working in the oil field for a long time and is a specialist at what he does and is personally taught me a lot of things. So I'm glad he was able to join us today. Thanks for being here, John. Thank you, Melissa. So let's pan back to the rig and let's talk about what we have over here a little more. So we said whenever we first started that there are 7 wells on this pad. Well, the 7 wells that are on this pad are spaced out on the surface 20 feet apart from each other. So one of the interesting things about this rig is this rig has the ability to walk. So it has a system of pistons that are underneath it that literally will pick the rig up off the ground with all of the drill pipe and the derrick and literally walk the rig 20 feet to the next well. So for reference, this rig can walk 20 feet in about an hour. So this is an amazing feat. It's a newer thing. Back in the day, before the rigs had these walking packages, the weight of the drill pipe itself was too much. And they would have to lay down all the drill pipe in order to literally hook the rig up with dozers and drag it to the next well. So as a reference, to lay down and pick up all this drill pipe would take us about 2 days to do that, depending on how long we're drilling. So it's an amazing feat of efficiency that we can do what would take days prior in just an hour to walk over to the next well. So let's sneak in a little bit closer and get a little more detail on some of the other things that we have on this rig as well. So where you can see where it says rig 78 on the side, that is what is known on the rig as the doghouse. A gentleman is there who is operating this rig, who is known as the driller. And the driller is currently in there now, and he can operate everything on this rig, from the amount of weight that we're placing on the bit to drill, the rotary speed, the pumps that we have, the drilling fluid downhole to cool and lubricate the bit, as well as clean the cuttings out. If we look over here as well, we'll sneak in a little bit closer. We can see that we have some specialized equipment that is set up underneath this rig as well. And this is known as our BOP, or blowout prevention equipment. This is a special set of configured rams and valves, essentially, if you will, that are used if we were to get into a situation where we needed to safely secure the well. So this equipment is installed on every well prior to doing any type of drilling, and then it is pressure tested before it is put into use to ensure that the equipment is functioning correctly. We pressure test this again on every well, and then we also pressure test it if something were to happen. 21 days times would lapse. We want to make sure that it's good because it is one of our first lines of defense if something were to happen. So, okay, so we covered some interesting stuff about the rig. We talked about the sound walls on location that Range does. We talked about the containment. I want to take this opportunity now to show you all some of the specialized tools that we use downhole to drill these wells. So we talked earlier that Range has taken our lateral lengths from about 3,500 feet to well over 19,000 feet, which is an incredible feat. So how did we get there? What's our story? What improvements did we make? One of the big pieces to the puzzle, and what has gotten us that far, is our advancements in technology and our tools that we use. So to give you an idea of an example here, this is what is known as a rotary steerable tool. This is literally what is on the bottom of the drill string right now, drilling the well. So let's talk about the rotary steerable tool to start. So as we can see here, this tool continuously rotates. The drill bit, which is here, which we'll talk about in a minute, is screwed on up front, and it is literally turning and shearing the rock to create the cuttings and drill the hole. Now this tool is very smart. It continuously turns. If you were to look right here where this is, we have 3 of these pads that are on this tool. So what happens is when this tool is turning, it is smart enough to know where these pads are in space. These pads literally will kick and deflect the tool where we want it to go. So for instance, if we are drilling at the bottom of the well and we for some reason need to steer the well up, these pads will kick the well on the bottom in order to deflect the bit up to come up. It also does the same thing for left and right, all in real time while this tool is rotating. So to give you an example of what that would look like, while we're rotating, this tool on surface is typically about 150 RPMs. So this tool is very intelligent and knows exactly where we are. So one of the other things that we haven't touched on is that while we're drilling this well, miles and miles, right, we are actively steering the well within a 10 to 15 foot window while we're drilling. So one of the things that happens is we have a huge team of individuals here on the rig site and remotely. One of the big pieces of the puzzle are geologists who actively steer the well while we're drilling. So this tool will literally pump up information via pressure pulses in our drilling fluid, and it helps the directional driller who's steering the well steer the well, as well as the geologist navigate the well and ensure that we're keeping it in the proper zone that we need to be. And that is one of the key things that we want to do, is make sure that we are placing the well in the crucial intervals where it needs to be. So that's our rotary steerable tool, which is used to drill the well. Let's see if I can snag this here. So this is known as a PDC bit, or a polycrystalline diamond compact bit. This is what is on the end of the drill string, which is drilling the well right now. So these bits are characterized by the number of blades that they have. So we have 5 blades, as well as the cutters that are on the bit as well. So these cutters are made out of a tungsten carbide, and they literally shear the rock while we're drilling. These cutters are typically characterized by their size in millimeters for how big they are. As we can see here as well, in the middle, we have these jets. The jets are part of the package that control the hydraulics for the tool. One of the important functions of these jets is they are sized so that when the drilling fluid, which exits out of the bit, it helps cool the bit, lubricate it, and then helps clean away the cuttings from the face of the bit so that we can continue drilling the well successfully. That's probably the Marcellus shell right there, because I think this one's been used. So a little Marcellus cutting stuff in there. So this is an example of what is on the end of this drill bit right now. And I would say this bit, having already drilled a well, looks pretty good. So we see not a lot of the cutters are chipped. Everything looks very nice. So these bits are great for drilling in our shale formations that we have here in the Appalachian Basin in Pennsylvania. And with that, so we will continue drilling this well to roughly 16,000 feet before we will pull that directional tool all the way out of the well, and then we will run our last string of casing that we talked about earlier, which is our 5.5-inch production casing string. At that point in time, we will again pump cement on the well, and the well will be secured and ready to hand over to the next phase in the process, which is completion, where they will begin the hydraulic fracturing process. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions that they wanted to ask?
Hey, thanks,
Hi, Pat and Kylie. Well, go ahead,
Sorry,
Michelle.
Maria. We have a couple quick questions that did come in. One was when you were showing the technology a few minutes ago, the new drill bit and the pipe. Do you have folks at Range Resources who kind of invent these things? How do you come up with those?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are very fortunate that it would be an impossible feat realistically if one person were to try to undertake all of this on our own. So we have a lot of third-party providers and service contractors that we will work with. We develop some things on our end, and a lot of them have outstanding technology that we use and apply in our current wells. So I would say we have some in-house, undoubtedly, yes, and we have some from our expertise that we have as well in order to help us successfully drill these wells.
Awesome. And one more question came about the drill bit. About how long do they last?
So we typically will utilize these drill bits to drill one well, but the nice thing about these PDC bits is they are able to be refaced and reused if there is some damage. So I don't have an average number, but I would say you could get 3 to 5 runs out of one bit.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. Thank you for taking the time to come along with us on this tour today. We really appreciate it. And I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I can go ahead and throw it over to our friends at the production pad if they are ready for us. Over there, we have Laurel Zemba. She's our Director of Public Affairs. And we have Bob Green. He's going to take us around the site. He is our Area Production Supervisor. Take it away.
All right, so today we are at the Lesnick location in Mount Pleasant Township in Washington County. We have 4 well heads. We are actually, they mentioned earlier in the video, the first Marcellus well was drilled in 2004. That's actually about a mile as the crow flies from where we stand today at this site. So we'll just start here with the wellheads. So we'll just start at the bottom. This very bottom valve with the largest handle on it is the frac valve. And then we have 2 master valves above that, and then 2 wing valves across the top. And then the largest valve with the handle that sticks out is our ESD valve, which stands for emergency shutdown. So there are many parameters across the whole site and all the equipment we'll see today that can automatically shut the well in. So if it's a high pressure, low pressure, high temperature, low temperature, tank gets too high, it will automatically shut the well in, which means any gas, water, or condensate that's flowing through this well will be shut in. The ESD valve itself can also be, there are probably about 5 buttons located on the site. You can just push the button. It'll completely shut all equipment down on the site. We have a gas control room as well that monitors every site we have in the field. And they can also, if they see something going on their screen, they can remotely emergency shut down the well. They can do it individually, or they can do a whole site where it'll shut in all the wells and all the pieces of equipment. So now that we talked about the valves themselves, so after the completions phase is finished, this is pretty much what a production site looks like, and this is the wellhead here. So the water, and I say oil a lot of times, it's actually a condensate. So what condensate is, it's a clear, opaque liquid. It's kind of like a gasoline. If you had it in a glass jar, it would almost look like a cloudy water. So that all flows up through the wellhead, through all the valves I mentioned, through the ESD valve, and then it goes into our flow line here, which is a light green piece of equipment, and goes into the ground. And it goes underground over to our gas production units. Another piece of equipment on the site we have here is just a casing transmitter. It just tells us what the pressure is that the wellhead currently has on it. And it also has an analog gauge where we can see and compare the two and make sure they're accurate. The ESD valve itself is pneumatic, so we use the gas pressure that holds the valve open, and it has a solenoid on it as well. So what actually tripped the ESD valve is the solenoid would close, that would shut off the gas pressure, which in turn then shuts that valve itself. So we'll make our way over to the gas production units and go through that. And that's pretty much our separators. And that's what we call a 3-phase separation. So we separate the water and oil from the gas. And then as we go through the rest of the equipment, we'll be able to tell where the oil goes, where the water goes, and where the gas goes. I don't know if she took a shot of the site. The site size is about 3.5 football fields in total. And this is pretty much what the site will look like for the rest of time, as far as we know, until the wells deplete, which it can range. We've heard, 25 to 40 years, just depending on the wells and the formation itself. So these big green boxes over here are what we call the gas production units. So as she gets over here, we'll start pretty much where the gas comes up out of the ground. So that flow line she showed you over there at the wellheads is buried underground, and it comes up right here. Then we have another valve, just an isolation valve called a block valve. And then we have a secondary ESD valve, emergency shutdown valve. This also will trip based on the parameters I spoke about, and it has its own button. If something were to go on, we needed to isolate the gas, we could just push this button. Another interesting piece is our automated choke. So this here will control the flow or pressure coming from the wellhead. So the wellhead is rated for a lot higher pressure than these units are themselves. So we have to have a device that will control that pressure, and that is our automated choke. So we can set in a flow rate, how much we want it to flow, and then a pressure as well. And it will look at those parameters and automatically open and close as needed. And this valve will also close if one of the emergency shutdown buttons are pushed. So Laura, if you want to come around, we'll look inside of the gas production unit itself. So this here is the actual separator. So that's where the water, oil, and gas is going in. So the water is going to drop to the bottom. The oil will sit on top of the water, and then the gas will go across the top and out the other side. And this is where each individual gas production unit will be metered. So we'll know how much gas is coming out of each well. As the water and oil separates, they each have their own dump valve on it. So we have to, get the fluids out of the separator itself. So the water will be dumped straight to our tanks, and then the condensate will be dumped to a heated flash separator, then onto a vapor recovery tower, and then to our tanks. As we walk through the rest of the site, we will go through them. And we also meter how much water comes out and how much condensate comes out. We'll head back out this way, Laurel. So just to our left here is pretty much, so all the wells individually go into the gas production unit. Then they meet up in a common pipe behind the gas production units. We meter it one more time collectively, all 4 wells collectively. And then it goes to our pig launcher and then to our pipeline. And then on to our compressor station for Mark West, and then on to the Houston plant. So we'll walk over to our next piece of equipment over here, which is our heater flash separator. This is one of the emergency shutdown buttons I mentioned earlier. So coming out of the back of the gas production units here, as I just mentioned, you can see where all 4 of them come into a common line, and then that's when it's piped over to our compressor station, and then the plant, and then on eventually to your homes. Okay, like I said, our next piece of equipment is our heated flash separator. So all the oil from all the wells is dumped into this vessel here in a rectangular green box. The heated part, obviously, we want to heat up the condensate because it's kind of a volatile product. So we need to stabilize it before it gets to the tanks. So what this does, we have a burner tube in there that we use natural gas to heat it up. And as the condensate heats up, the vapors release from the condensate. And then once some of those release, it is dumped from the heater flash separator to our vapor recovery tower. So that's our tall tower in the back here. And it's pretty much the same idea without heat though. So we need to stabilize the product some more. So that vessel is at a lower pressure. So we're right around 150 to 200 pounds on the gas production units. The heater flash separator runs around 35 pounds. And then the VRT, the vapor recovery tower, runs anywhere between 2 and 6 pounds. So as we add the heat here, the lower pressure there releases more of the vapors and helps stabilize the products even more. So I mentioned both of these pieces of equipment release vapors. So what do we do with those vapors? Behind the heater flash is 2 smaller boxes, which are VRUs, and those are vapor recovery units. So they will pull the vapors out of the heater flash separator, compress them, and put them back into the sales line. And then the other vapor recovery unit pulls the vapors out of the vapor recovery tower and also puts them back into the sales line. So the vapors themselves are worth money. So we don't ever want any vapors getting into the atmosphere because they are actually worth money to us. So that is something we do not want. So now the condensate, the oil itself, will actually now be dumped into the tanks. As you can see, everything else was green except for our tanks. Our tanks are white because in the past we did have green tanks, and as we would dump oil in there in the summertime, as the heat would heat up the tanks themselves, that would create some more vapors in the tanks. So it was a little harder to control. We would have another vapor recovery unit to pull off of the tanks themselves. All the water and all the oil produced on this site is trucked off. The water goes all to our fracs, and then the condensate is hauled off eventually to a refinery. Just to your right here, Laurel, we have 2 other green stacks, which are called EBUs. They're enclosed burning units. So as a backup or another redundancy, if we would have vapors in our tanks, it would get too high of a pressure for the tank, we will burn off those vapors, more or less, like I said, just as a backup, as a safety precaution, to control the pressures that are in the tanks. That's pretty much the gist of the gas, the water, oil, and the gas, how it gets through the site. A few other pieces of equipment, what we have. One of the parameters that would ESD the site, this is an LEL monitor right here. So this is always drawing in air from the site, and if there happen to be any gas or vapors leaking from anything, this thing will alarm and trip, and that would shut in the whole site. So I mentioned we can shut in the site remotely. Remotely. Our lease operators that come to the site every single day, they all have computers and phones. They will get alarms for any of the parameters that would trip, including an ESD or from the LEL itself. But so how do we turn it back on? Well, due to safety reasons, somebody physically has to come to the site to turn the well back on. So whatever alarm has tripped to emergency shut down the site, they will come here, see what the issue was, resolve it, and then they manually or physically have to turn the wells back on. Right now, we are underneath a roof here, and this is called our RTU. This is a remote terminal unit. It's got a touchscreen on it. It's a little easier to see today, Laurel, since the sun's not out. So all the pieces of equipment that I just mentioned, I'm not sure if it's showing up there, a little bit, kind of. So this is pretty much like an app on your phone. The guys can touch this, the oil truck drivers, the water truck drivers, they can come see what's in the tanks, click on a well, see what it's flowing, what the pressures are themselves. And this also right here has another emergency shutdown button. That's pretty much the gist of what goes on a production pad here. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and fire away.
Hey, thanks, Bob. This is Michelle. One question came in about the pig launcher. What is that?
Okay, so that's all the gas goes through the pipeline. So at times, based on temperatures, because once it gets underground, it gets a little cooler. Some liquids that are still entrained in the gas would drop out into the pipeline. So they put a foam pig, pretty much, it's about that long, kind of got a point. It's kind of like a little torpedo. It's made of foam. And what they'll do, and it's just a smaller diameter than the actual pipe itself, they'll get gas pressure behind it and run it from this pad to either the next pad or the compressor station. And that pig will run through the line. That's kind of like a foam bullet, like I said, and that'll push all the liquids out of the line to keep. If you let the liquids build up, it'll eventually slow down the gas, and gas pressure will back up onto the pad and could eventually emergency shut down the site if the gas pressure got too high. So that's just a way of cleaning out the pipelines themselves.
Okay. What classes did you like in high school that maybe got you to where you are today?
That's a great question. So I actually, coming out of high school, went to a medical school and was trained in orthotics and prosthetics. So I made artificial arms and legs for about 13, 14 years before I started doing this. And then I was in Atlanta, Georgia doing that. And then I moved back here. I'm from Pennsylvania. I moved back to Pennsylvania, knew somebody in the industry. I heard it was just getting started. So I pretty much rolled the dice and took an entry-level job as a lease operator. And I've been here almost 14 years now. So I didn't have any necessary classes in high school that led me towards this. It led me more to the medical industry.
So did you learn then on the job, Bob?
I did. Yeah. So pretty much a lease operator's responsibility is they'll have either 30 to 40 wells that they're responsible for. They have to go to every single day, check every piece of equipment we just saw on the site, as well as they work with our environmental compliance team. So you heard in the videos earlier, our FLIR camera, our forward-looking infrared. So they will come out here with that FLIR camera and check every connection on every piece of equipment on this site. It is required by the state to do it twice a year, but Range does it quarterly. We do it 4 times a year. So that's pretty going above and beyond, and the camera will pick up the tiniest leak that you can imagine. You won't hear it, you won't see it, you won't smell it. the camera will still pick it up. So we're required, like I said, to do that for the environmental compliance. But yeah, I pretty much started at the bottom where I was, responsible to come into these sites every single day, and then just slowly work my way up through these past 14 years.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Last question was, what happens if something does go wrong, like a valve breaks or something out there? I would imagine you have somebody whose job it is to fix it. Is that the lease up, the individual?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Depending on how large the valve is, pretty much most of the maintenance on the site is done by the lease operator themselves. Depending on where it is, if it's on the wellhead, sometimes we'll bring in a valve company. If it's the larger valves that are on the wellhead, they have specialized tools for that. But pretty much the rest of the equipment itself that we looked over in the gas production unit, any of our guys can fix that. We also have instrumentation and electrical techs. So, the LEL monitor that we looked at and some of the other electronics on site, those guys are specialized in handling those pieces of equipment. But pretty much everything else is our lease operators take care of.
Great, thanks. That's all the questions we have.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining.
Hi, everyone. We don't have any other questions to field through to everyone. I did have a question to ask you, Christina, if you don't mind sharing with our viewers. It should be an easy question. Is if students wanted to learn more about range resources or the current job opportunities that are available, where should they go?
Absolutely. So we have a really great school outreach program, and we take a really personal hold on that. So my best recommendation is, yes, there's a lot of information out there on our website, our YouTube, our LinkedIn, our Facebook. You can reach us there, but I would recommend reaching out to BotsIQ or to us directly. If your school district is home to some of our operations, we do have a close relationship with your school district, your teachers, your administration. So I would reach out directly to me or Kylie or Laurel on our team if you have something specific you would like to look into, a specific type of career you want more information on. We invite you to reach out to us that way. And in addition to that, we do have things like this virtual tour. We've hosted other virtual tours. We are hosting a career Q&A panel through the Beaver County Chamber of Commerce coming up on November 5th. So if you don't know, if you're interested, but you don't have a specific question, or you just want to learn more, those types of programs, we will be offering those on a rolling basis. So yes, we do invite you to learn more if you're interested.
Thanks so much, Christina. I'd like to, on behalf of BotsIQ, thank Range Resources, Christina, Kylie and Laurel and Bob and Pat for hosting the tour and teaching us a lot more about the natural gas industry. Also, I'd like to thank all of our viewers, teachers, and students for joining our virtual event. As a reminder, BotsIQ will be hosting additional events throughout the month of October. You could check out our events by visiting our events page at www.botsiqpa.com. Don't forget to connect with BotsIQ and Range Resources on social media. You could find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can also find BotsIQ on Instagram. This is also a great way to learn about future virtual events and other exciting things that we have coming up. And don't forget, BotsIQ has an exciting competition in the spring. Again, many thanks to everyone for participating today, and for Range Resources opening up their doors to our community. And thanks to all of our host as well. This concludes our event.
Thank you, BotsIQ. And thanks to all
Bye.
my colleagues out in the field.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. So we are done